Every book has a moment before the page. A decision, a risk, a story worth telling. This is Authors After Action. Conversations with authors about the journey, the work, and the lessons learned along the way.
Welcome to Authors After Action. I am your host, Donald Dunn. Today we're stepping into a world where ancient powers collide with the deepest struggles of the human heart. Our guest is J.F. Monroe, visionary author of the Legacy of the Four trilogy. Inspired by epic worlds like The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and The Hunger Games, she crafts stories filled with courage, sacrifice, and unforgettable characters. Get ready to explore the magic behind the storytelling. Let's welcome Mrs. Monroe to the show.
How's it going, JF?
It's going very well. That was an awesome introduction. Thank you for that. That was really cool.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So why don't we dig into a little bit about it? What started the writing process? What made you decide to become an author?
Oh my gosh. So it kind of happened in fragmented parts, to be honest. So it never started with, I'm going to become an author. It started with, I was on maternity leave. The doctor was like, get off your feet. You're done. And I was like, all right, I'm not one to sit around for a long time. And so my brain got a little muddled, and I started watching a lot of TV and a lot of movies. And I was watching a particular show where they had kind of introduced the concept of the Four Horsemen, and they would utilize humans to like visit Earth in a way. And I was like floored by that. I thought that was just the coolest concept. At that time, hadn't heard a lot of like cinema or any type of TV shows talking about the Horsemen. And I fell down the rabbit hole of like, okay, a story started kind of like growing in my head. Again, nothing of an author ever came into my head. I was just like, I like the story. Let me just start writing it down. All right, let me add things here and there. Mind you, my maternity leave was 7 years ago. I have a 7-year-old son right now. So nothing really became of it until about like 5 years later. Cause I think actually the first book came out in 2025. So 6 years later, but yeah, it really started as this like fragmented journey of, oh, that's a cool concept. Oh, let me write it down. All right, maybe I want to do something more with it. And so became the Legacy of the Four trilogy.
There we go. Well, so at what point did you know this was going to become a trilogy then?
I was on the phone with a friend, and I was trying to get my steps in. It was a normal day. I was walking around the block, and she was like, you keep talking about this story. Why don't you just try to like write it out, actually like put it on, paper and publish it. Like let other people read it. It sounds really cool. And I'm that type of person that's like, no, nobody wants to read that. Get out of here. I'm not like that. I write for like pleasure, like for myself. Maybe I'll let a friend here and there. I went home, hung up the phone with her, went home. The next day, I don't know what came over me, if she like put a spell or something, but I sat down and I'm like, why not? Right? Like, why not me? And I have been living, I've been living my life that way for a very long time, like that why not me statement. And so I was just like, why can't it apply here? Like, let me just write it down and see what happens. I don't got to do anything with it, but let me see where this takes me. And it had started as a screenplay. I took a lot of film courses in college and theater courses in college. Like I was obsessed with screenplays. And so it started as a screenplay, and very quickly I realized that it was not going to be condensed to a screenplay. And so I was like, all right, let's try a book. Okay. One book, we're fine. And I kept writing and didn't stay in one book, but 3. And so I just kind of lived that journey as it came to me. Which is awesome and amazing and a lot of fun, but also like really anxiety inducing and tiring. So there's pros and cons.
Yes. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't know really what it takes what the process is involved to get that book in their hands or onto their Kindle even. There's way more stuff behind the scenes than people really know. I think
Yes.
on top of that, I think every author, when they first start out, says that same thing. Ain't nobody going to want to read that, And I know I used to tell people, when I published my first book, it was about me. And I didn't really feel that I had done anything crazy. I did have a little bit of a story to tell, but I did it because my daughter asked me to publish it. And so when I did that, everybody asked me, well, where can I get it? And I said, oh, it's going to be in every pharmacy right next to the melatonin,
Awesome.
I didn't think anybody would want it. And I got some good reviews from it, and I sold a few books, and I really shocked me, but I think that is the general response that happens. Authors are like, nah, nobody wants this. And then they get it out there and they find, people do like this, or they are buying this,
Yep.
What were some of the things when you first started, right? Because you said you started it as a screenplay. I think screenplays are hard as heck to write. Yeah, I had the formatting and everything is so different compared to a book. I'll stick on that book side any day of the week. What were some of the things that when you first started playing with it, you were like, oh man, this is going to be hard. This is going to be easy. What were some of the things you liked and disliked?
About the screenplay version?
Or just about writing in general?
Got it. So there were a ton. The writing, I love writing. I grew up writing.
Okay.
Writing part came easy to me. And this is going to sound terrible. And I tell this with all the podcasts I'm on, because I've seen a lot of podcasts and I've seen a lot of authors get on, and some are so structured and it's so amazing. And they have books and plans and whiteboards. And I just have my brain. That's it. That's all I got. And so I just sit, that's all I have. And I just sit down and I'm like, I'm feeling it today. All right, let's start with this. And sometimes I'll write 5 chapters and it'll just come out of me. And the next day I'll delete 3 of them and I'll be like, goodbye, farewell. I don't want to see you anymore. I've changed. Exactly.
Yeah.
It just, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay living in that space of a little bit of constructive chaos of I don't really have a plan. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to get comfortable. I'm going to have my cup of coffee near me, or if it's nighttime, cup of tea. And I'm just going to see what comes to me, because the story's already in my head. I've already kind of played it out. And if it comes to me that night, great. And if it doesn't, I'll just start again the next night. I tried to show myself a lot of grace when doing this because I was so new to it. I get overwhelmed very easily. I have high anxiety. I'm a human being. And so when I started to research how to even begin to write a book, I quit immediately because there's 5 million different ways to do it and everyone has the best way. And that's awesome for them. And I was like, that's not going to work. I can't read it. That's not going to work for me. So I'm just going to do it by myself and see what happens from there.
I think that's the best advice right there. What you just said right there is do it your way, because at the end of the day, there is so many different authors out there, and there's so many different personalities within those authors that everybody finds that little niche for them, right? Some people like to do it first thing in the morning when they get up. Some people are just note people that they sit there throughout the day, and when things come to them, they write these notes, and then at night maybe they sit down and type. Some people are like me and you. Me and you are a lot more similar. I write, and some days there's chapters, and some days there's a half a chapter. It's just whatever comes out and happens, I'm good with it. It's no time restraints. When I get it done, I get it done. And the part that I live in the nonfiction world, right? So 2 out of the 3 books I've published are both nonfiction. And I wrote one fiction book that was about depression and anxiety and PTSD, but it was a way for me to give the readers a view of what it looks like. There's so many people that say, oh, why can't you just get over it or just let it go or get in a better mood, whatever, right? And it's because they don't see what's going on in that person's head. And so I created this book called When Demons Follow You Home. And I put a real demon out there to do and put the same symptoms that we feel onto these people. Now somebody can see what's happening from another person. Right now there's a physical battle going on. And when I did that, I realized that it's so different compared to nonfiction world. And I found myself having to write little stories about each character so that I could remember, no, this person wouldn't say it like that 10 chapters from now or whatever. And it was really a struggle. I found the nonfiction world a lot easier than the fiction world. What about you? How do you feel? Do you think nonfiction comes easy for you, or are you that same way where you're very detail oriented and the small details matter?
Okay, this is going to sound funny. I'm not detail oriented, but the small details do matter. So what I do is I'll forget like an eye color. And so like, I'll be like, oh, his gorgeous blue eyes in, the first chapter. Yep. And like in chapter 52, I'm like, what color were his eyes? And I have to like go back into my book. Nonfiction would be a killer for me. And it's for one reason and one reason only. I am absolutely 110% terrible at talking about myself. I could not dictate my life. I would love to journal. I've been told several times, like, why don't you journal? I think that's so healthy. I agree. I try to journal. I cannot do it. Yeah. It's just something that does not, and I'm just not gifted in that way of being like, this is what I want to say. And it doesn't work that way. Now, if you tell me to write like a short story about something that maybe I went through, but through a character's eyes, I can do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I can do it. Like it can kind of like disassociate myself from the issue that I'm having and have it like spell out through a character. That is more my forte than like, oh gosh, I got to write about me.
And see, that is perfect too, because what a lot of people don't realize, even though it's been around for years, that is where nonfiction and fiction really do overlap, right? They both have that point of where they can teach a lesson, whether it be true or not true, all the way back to, the stories we would tell kids in the 1800s, don't go in the woods, the monsters out there, blah, blah, blah. And that whole lie and that whole story about what these monsters were doing to people was about to keep our kids safe from going out into the woods. And you could do that same thing with fiction nowadays as well. There's still lessons to be learned out of that. So what you said makes perfect sense. It's easier to do that and be that third person sense and write about the character that's doing true stuff. So absolutely. What about when you got a little bit deeper? So now the book is done, and now we're going to start the editing process. What was your thought process when you started editing your first book?
I have learned so much through the editing process, and I've learned so much from like my first book to my third, and you can see it. Like somebody that reads my first book and second book and third book sees the progression, and I'm fine with that. I actually like it now. It took me a second to wrap my head around it. It goes back to what we were talking about when I said that this started as a screenplay. Yeah. So when you're writing a book, less is more, right? Because you want the reader to be able to like visualize what's happening. You give them credit where credit's due. Like you can write a scene, but let them interpret it the way they want to. A screenplay is the opposite. A screenplay does a lot of telling.
Yep.
And so in my first book, and I'm just going to be completely transparent, I do a lot of telling. Like no disrespect to the reader, it's just my writing style because I grew up with screenplays. So I told everything in the kitchen sink in the first book. Not that it takes you out of the story, but you can tell the difference when you go to book 2. Right. Because book 2, I was like, I have learned from book 1 that I talk too much in this. And so now I'm going to just let the characters develop. Let them speak for themselves because they got a lot to say. I don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
And then by book 3, fingers crossed, I think I got a nice flow into the finale, into the ending of like, I edited and it was just, I stripped some pages bare in terms of just like, you don't got to say this. They can see it. It's right there. And so the editing process was brutal, but it was necessary. And it did turn out to be a lot of fun once I accepted the fact that, okay, look, you progressed. Progress over perfection. So,
Yeah. That was, if there's any spot where people need to be doing research, isn't so much on how to write a book. It's how to edit a book, right?
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is because I did not do that when I wrote my first book. So what I found myself doing was making the biggest mistake ever, and that was writing a chapter, going back and editing that chapter, then writing chapter 2 and going back and editing that chapter. And you will never get that book done if you do it that way, because by the time you get to chapter 10, something in chapter 1 is going to change. You're going to find yourself going back and rewriting details or things that you left out, even in the nonfiction world. You mentioned journaling. As a military guy, I wish I would have journaled, because some of the best books come from veterans who spent their careers journaling, and they had all those notes. I have a very short memory, and so I struggled with some of those details because I never wrote them down. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I can give as far as advice is research the editing process. And you're going to find out that everybody tells you when you write a story, just get it on the paper. Don't make it look pretty. Just get it on the paper. Get the story out there. That's what the editing process is for. And I still hate the editing process, by the way.
I love that. I love that. Yes. But you know what? Get it on the paper. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you got to take from it.
That's the main thing, is get it wrote down. Then you can go back and make it look pretty.
Exactly.
That's the biggest key is get it done, because then you're going to see progress. Now the story's done. Now we're going to go back and we're just going to polish it and make it look good. But it's also the most important part is the editing process, right? And there's different types of editing. There's line editing. There's developmental editing, where you're looking for flow and conjecture. Like you mentioned before in your first book, you were more narrating the storyline, to where in book 2 now the voices were coming out of the characters. And yeah, that makes perfect sense, because I struggled with that as well when I wrote that first fiction book. I found myself trying to write it like I was writing a nonfiction book, and I was narrating the whole story. And that makes it hard for the reader, because they're trying to get that vibe of what that person feels like. So absolutely. The last thing I want to say real quick is, you brought on a very valid point. You said that you were okay with it. And I personally, when I'm coaching people with podcasts, right, in the world of AI where we are today, I encourage some mistakes. And I think that people are slowly getting to that point too, where they want to know that the person that wrote this book is human. And the only way they're going to get that is, 1, to feel the authenticity from the author, and 2, if they see a few small minor mistakes, they're okay with that. That just confirms what they thought, is that the other person on the other side is human. This is not something that AI created, right? And so I think having those little things in your podcast or in your book is okay nowadays. I just think that's the way we've kind of evolved and changed. What is your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I think that AI has grown to be such a huge topic, not just in like the creative world, but just in the world in general.
Right.
I think it's very useful in some ways as a tool.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I'm not afraid to say that. But I understand that creatively, I don't want it writing my book for me. Like the ideas that came to me before Chat or Claude, whichever one came first, was even probably a thought process to the people building it, but not a thought process to us.
Right.
And so when I started to write this book, it never really occurred to me like to use like AI, because I would just sit down and start writing like I normally did every other time that I sat and wrote something that didn't get published.
Yeah.
Do I use it at my job, like my 9 to 5? 100%. It's a great tool and it makes my life a little easier.
Yeah.
But in my writing, I don't want it to really touch that. It's not it doesn't work for me. Now, I will not condemn anybody that uses it as like an editing tool or something like that. If that's your way to do things and that helps you be what you want to be, I'm not going to condemn you for it. Like, that's not my business. You do what you got to do. There's a lot of very vocal people on the places I go on social media on this topic. And I'm not going to be one of those people, but I personally do not use it.
Yeah. And I think nowadays, anybody that says that they never use AI at all for anything is lying. They just don't realize they're using it. Whether you're using auto, the auto spelled on your phone or on Word documents or whatever, how do you think Netflix suggests which things are going to be good for you that you watched previously? These are all AI type algorithms that are out there. They weren't called AI. And so people didn't know it. But I do agree with you 100%. AI is a great tool. And if you let it write your book for you, you're going to be extremely disappointed because it's going to tell you this is such a great storyline and this is awesome. And you're going to think it's going to become the #1 bestseller, but it's going to fall flat. And it's because AI doesn't have that ability to become authentic or put that human emotion in it yet. And so what I tell people is, if you're going to use it to check grammar, maybe even use it as a thesaurus and change some words, that's fine. But don't let it reconstruct paragraphs. If it highlights this whole thing, says you should say it this way, you might want to double check that because it's going to take your voice out of the story. And that's what readers like.
I agree. It comes off from what I've seen, like it comes off pretty hollow still. Yep. That's not to say in a few months, maybe a few years that it doesn't, because it's growing pretty fast. But right now, it doesn't catch the author's voice, the human voice.
Well, let's dive into a little bit about the next part of the being an author, right? So did you self-publish, or did you go through a traditional publisher, or how did you do it?
I self-published. So
okay.
I'm self-published on Amazon.
I did as well. And there is, pluses and minuses to both sides of traditional and self-publishing. The part that, a lot of people, when they get into this, that they don't realize is how many hats go into making a book, right? You've got the creator, the writer, that's one hat. Then you got the editor, and then you got the marketer, then you got the distributor, and all of these, when you say, hey, I'm going to self-publish, you take on these hats, or you assign those to other people if you have a team that you've built. But either way, that reach is now on you. What were some of the things that you found when you got to that point of, how do I now tell the world that I wrote this book?
This was a rude awakening for me, Donald. I'm all about honesty here. I was in that bucket that was like, I wrote a book. I put it on Amazon.
Yep.
Go forth and people read it now. And I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to wait. Yep. And I'm ready. Yeah. Come to me. Yeah. Which is, it's silly in hindsight, but I knew there would be a marketing component. Mm-hmm. I was a procrastinator in college, and apparently I was a procrastinator here, because it's just, when things get me very nervous, I tend to try to avoid them a little bit.
Me too.
And so marketing was my white whale. It was just I love putting on the writer's hat. Heck, I liked putting on the editor's hat. I'll do that. I will do it. I found someone to help me with my book cover. That took a lot out of me, but I did it. I was like, hey, I went on Fiverr. It's an amazing site, by the way. And I was like, help me. And they did. And then marketing. And it was just, that's a different beast. And so that was the part where I actually had to pause for a second and say, okay, obviously this book is not just going to go on Amazon and sell itself. Yep. I wasn't too concerned with sales at that point in time, but I did want people to read it. Like I just wanted people to read it. And so I had it on KDP. I put it on Kindle Unlimited for free. I just wanted it out there. And then I had Instagram. I made an author Instagram, and then I made an author TikTok.
Okay.
Instagram I was pretty familiar with just because in my personal life I had used it. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. Like I can work with this and try to learn some of the hashtags and algorithms and stuff like that.
Yep.
But I called, my friends make fun of me because TikTok, I would call it the TikTok. Like it was foreign to me. I didn't know how to use it. And so, and then it was scary because it's like, 30 seconds and then you lose their attention. And so I'm like, okay, how do I incorporate this book onto TikTok? Because if you incorporate it the right way, if you market it the right way, you have a better chance of increasing your views, of people adding you to Goodreads, of people adding you on Amazon.
Yeah.
And so that journey took a while. I'm still on it, and I've gotten so much better than what I was, but I'm not like at the pinnacle yet, right? Like I'm not there. I think I ever will be, and I'm so okay with that at this point in time. But I do have a decent following, and I do get decent views, and I'm okay with that for what I put into it.
Yeah, I think this is where I think a lot of people find the most trial by error and learning. And to be honest, that's okay, because that's exactly what marketing is you try something. If it doesn't work, then you go back to the drawing board and you try something else. And the few mistakes that I have found, I made them as well. It took me until like book 3 to realize it. But what a lot of people do, they do exactly what you just said. They put it on Amazon and they say go forth, and it's done and forget it. And they forget that they can go back in and maybe your book took off and it sold great, right? And then it started to slowly peter out. Well, those are the times that you can go back in and change your categories, your BISAC, and adjust those a little bit and figure out other niches that book might fit into, and refresh it back into the algorithm just a little bit. And a lot of people forget about that, not to mention small little things, creating a very basic web page and using some SEO tactics to try to get people to learn about your book. People think if you have a web page, it has to be to sell your book. Well, no, it can be an informative page. It can be a blog that you write a little bit about how you came up with a chapter or so forth, right? And there's all these little techniques that nobody's out there going to tell you for free. You're going to have to remember that you created that book because you have creativity. And that's really what marketing is as well, is taking some of that creativity, being okay with if you tried something and it failed, you just throw that back in the book, take the positive from it, throw away the negative, and keep moving, adjust it and try some more. That's what I do. And, I have found myself, I'm a little bit different in your aspect. I do not like the editing process. Anytime I can pay somebody to edit my book, I will definitely do that. But I do love the marketing side, and I do love SEO, and it falls a little bit more into the company that I own, Barracks Media, because that's what we do. We build websites, and SEO and LLMs are all big parts of that aspect. And I love that creativity side of trying to figure out what's going to get that algorithm's attention. You mentioned TikTok, and that is a beast right there. TikTok, man. I had an author come on here and tell me that what she would do is she would read a chapter and create it as a reel and then put it out there, right? And she found some success from that. So I thought I would try that with my book. And I'm like, I'm not very good at reading. So nobody is going to listen to me on TikTok. So that part didn't work out so well for me, but I loved her imagination. I gave it the old college try, and no, those got deleted.
Fair. That's fair. But you tried. And I think that's what matters, right? Like it was to your point, just try.
Absolutely.
Just try it.
What are some of the examples that you did with marketing that either worked great or failed for you?
So I have some really awkward videos. I wouldn't say they failed. They were kind of fun to put together. I
Okay.
think they showcased, if they showcased anything, it was my personality. So I was like, all right, well, what you see is what you get. So there it is.
Yeah.
So I think early on in the TikTok world, that when I first entered it, I would create these reluctant author videos where it was basically me coming on saying like, this is the last thing that I want to be doing is being here, just being transparent. But here I am because I'm trying to market this book. And I'm sure, it's probably a cliche move by now. I'm sure other authors have used it too, but I was being completely honest. Like, I'm here solely because I want people to read this book. And then I would give like a little tidbit about it. Like, if you like this and if you like that, check out the book. And then I started to play around with Canva, and I got pretty good.
Yeah.
And like, I would get really cool backgrounds that caught people's attentions. I would put dialogue that was very eye-catchy. So like TikTok gives you, if you're posting, you get to put like a quick, like short title. And so I would be like, all right, well, the title's everything. That's what's going to catch their attention. The picture, make sure the picture catches their attention. And then I would study when I would post them at what times. So like on a Tuesday, I learned that if I posted in the morning, people were checking before, work, school, whatever, what have you, like really early, like 7, And then like closer to Thursday, Friday, if you posted in the evening, because like people were winding down, that got you higher views. And so I was paying attention to the patterns without wanting to, because I really didn't want to, but like it starts to like get ingrained in what you're doing. And so I found that as many people, few people like seeing my face, a lot of people like seeing the pictures with the pieces of dialogue, like a person's quote that was really catchy. I would put something really spicy on there, like just to quickly catch their attention. And so they pause. And then once they pause, the algorithm readjusts. And so hopefully I pop up on somebody else's, like a similar account.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. I'm not going to say that it's not.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not for me. I wasn't made for it, but I am doing it. I do have fun. I do. There are times when I do have fun. And so I can admit that. And it's working so far. So.
Yeah. So what I did in change, when I realized I wasn't going to be able to sit there and read a book on TikTok, what I did do on TikTok was, because I'm really good with computers, I said, why is it that only movies have trailers? Why can't I make a trailer about my book? And so that's what I did. I made an AI video that encapsulated my book. And, short, 20, 30 second, had a cinematic narrator's voice behind it talking about it and so forth. And, I don't know if that led to any of my book getting bought, but I definitely had fun. And it brought back some of the creativity side of that I enjoyed doing. I think that all authors and podcasters enjoy is the creativity side. So absolutely. Well, Jeff, can you tell everybody where is it that they can purchase your book, follow you, and maybe even ask questions or so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. So my books are on Amazon right now. Book 1 and 2 are up there. Book 3 comes out next week, Tuesday, I want to say the 24th. Which is really, really exciting. And I'm ready to go there. Social media, it's very simple. It's at jf.monroe for both TikTok and Instagram. And I do have a website that I'm actually very proud of. I'm not going to say I didn't have help, because I definitely had help in making it. That is not me. When you sign on to that jfmonroe bookshelf.com, that is the help of wonderful magical elves that decided, to help me. And so it's really beautiful. And if you want to ask any questions, you can reach me there, and you can reach me via Instagram or TikTok. I actually encourage it because I am always ready to talk about books and about the author's journey. So happy to answer any questions wherever you can find me.
Well, absolutely. For all you guys that are listening, and if you haven't figured it out right now, that there is a whole closet full of hats that have to be worn to make the book process work and that you enjoy reading. So we ask from you guys to do one thing, and that's one, go over to her website or go to Amazon, purchase her book, and when you're done, read a review. That's only two hats. That's read a book, write a review. Two things. A lot less than what it took to make the book. So make sure that you at least do that. Reviews help tremendously with the algorithms for Amazon and Goodreads and all sorts of other unique places. So if you do reach out, follow her on Instagram, share her profile and let other people learn about her as well. So I hope all of you guys got a little bit out of this. I know I did. Y'all take care. Be safe. Miss Monroe, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Donald.
You've been listening to Authors After Action, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their story, and thank you for listening. You can explore more conversations like this across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.